E aí, pessoal, estamos na live já. E aí, Leandro, beleza? Salve, salve, salve. Quase achei que a gente ia ter alguns problemas técnicos aí, mas no fim deu tudo certo. Eu já falei com o Mohamed ali, eu vou fazer uma introdução em português aqui pro pessoal, e depois a gente vai começar a apresentação, começar a traduzir para o inglês daí. Beleza? Vamos dar uns 5 minutinhos aí pro pessoal chegar. Mohamed, we'll just wait for like 5 minutes until
Yeah, sure.
the guys are joining.
Yeah, sure.
E aí, Felipe, beleza? Pessoal, para quem não entender muito bem inglês também, eu vou servir aí como um tradutor, então se vocês quiserem lançar perguntas depois no meio da live, podem lançar, que eu interrompo o Mohamed, eu pergunto para ele aqui, não tem nenhum problema, ele falou que é bem tranquilo isso, ele gosta de perguntas no meio da apresentação, então podem fazer perguntas em inglês, seria melhor em inglês, que eu só clico e coloco na tela. Se for em português, eu traduzo. Aí, Leandro, ele vai entender. Yeah, Leandro is saying something like, "Hey, dude." He's commenting that.
Hello.
A ideia aqui, pessoal, é a seguinte: é falar um pouco sobre DevOps, Continuous Delivery, Continuous Integration, tudo que o Mohamed tem experiência. Cara, ele tem muita experiência mesmo. Então ele vai compartilhar aí o que ele quiser, basicamente, e a gente vai tentar sugar algum conhecimento dele e fazer perguntas e tal, sem nenhum problema. E também ele vai falar um pouco sobre a transição dele de país. Ele nasceu em país e daí passou por vários países da Europa, mas ele não é da Europa, então eu acho que é um conteúdo interessante ter uma visão dessa migração, mesmo que ele seja de outro país, né? Acho que vai ser legal ter uma visão. Slangs. Ah, Leandro, não me envergonhe na frente do cara aí, rapaz, pelo amor de Deus. Okay, more 2 minutes.
Yes, no problem. But usually in the UK, we don't use dude. I mean, this is an American a little bit.
Yeah.
Usually in the UK, we say mate. So, hello, mate. How are you doing, mate? Yeah.
Cool.
It's a little bit different.
Okay, yeah. Viu, né, galera? É mate, senão nós vamos tomar uma tunda. Quem quiser pode procurar o nome dele no LinkedIn, que ele certamente vai estar bem aberto para adicionar vocês. O canal do Mohamed e as redes sociais estão na descrição. Vocês podem clicar ali e acessar o canal dele, tá? Let me share the link of our live on my Telegram channel.
Yeah, sure.
Aí, Leandro rasgando no inglês, hein? Um outro objetivo que me levou a fazer essa live, pessoal, foi também o fato do inglês, tá? Eu queria mostrar, assim, que quando a gente acaba tendo um pouco de conhecimento em inglês, a gente consegue quebrar várias barreiras, né? E conseguir se comunicar com pessoas de outros países e tal. Então, eu espero que isso aí ajude vocês também. Ok, cool. I think we can start. Pergunta padrão. Vai ficar gravado sim, Rafael. E agora eu vou mudar para o inglês para conversar com o Mohamed ali e tal. Depois ele vai apresentar e a gente vai perguntando, beleza? Okay, Mohamed, now I'm going to switch to English officially. Okay. So first of all, I want to thank you for being here, for taking your time to share some part of your knowledge with some Brazilian folks. I think I have invited more than 40 colleagues from LinkedIn, and none of them, the most part of them did not even respond me. And like, you were really open to share your knowledge. So thank you again.
Thank you. No problem.
Yeah. And I feel like we as content creators, we are kind of leading a really important role during the coronavirus, because the most part of our folks, they are like not motivated to study, and we are like, we have this role of like pushing them forward to study more. So thank you again.
No problem.
Please introduce yourself, tell who you are, where you work, what are you up to, DevOps,
sure.
And share about your channel and all the stuff.
Okay, sure. First of all, yes, if you want it's American, so I will say no problem. If it is British or UK, I will say no worries. So yes, it's a little bit different here for. Okay. Yes, it's always welcome for me is to share the knowledge, and even we can start by that. Why people is not responding, and because again, this is even for young people, maybe they getting surprised why people not responding, because I just, this is very important. Again, people would like to help many. I mean, but the problem is always the time. Time is time is really precious, and it's really you can't get more time. This is why I remember many of the people, especially in Danish, when I was in Denmark, the people is really counting every second. They have something to do in every second, and they have a plan for everything. So they will not respond to any message that they don't know. They will not even read the message. So again, don't get offense or about that or feeling bad. It's just, again, the people is just they don't have time to. So this is the first part. Okay, let me introduce myself, and I think I will use the presentation to introduce myself, and then from here we can start.
Cool. You can share your screen. I will put your screen on the live.
Okay. So I will share the screen now. So can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's on the screen. Guys, can you see the screen? Probably yes. But just to confirm, please comment here if you're seeing the screen. Vocês conseguem ver a tela, pessoal? Comentem aí. Para quem não entende inglês. Acredito que sim, né? Yeah, they can see.
Okay, great. So first, let me start from the beginning. Let me give you a quick introduction about myself. My name is Mohammed Radwan. I'm a cloud DevOps consultant with more than 17 years of experience. So I started back in 2002 as a classic KCP developer. So I am an old guy, and then moved to different role and position, working with different technologies. So for example, I work with SQL Server 7, SQL Server 2000, Sybase, Power Builder, Java, JavaScript. And for the last 8 years, I focused more on consultancy-based role, where I helped more than 50 enterprise customers, some of them from the Fortune 500. I relocated for several countries, eventually in the UK, London-based. So part of the community, because I am MVP Most Valuable Professional, so I share my experience and some of the contribution. I author many guides, frameworks, automation, tools or command line tools, which is published on Azure DevOps Marketplace or GitHub. I also presented many sessions and many conferences all over the globe in US, UK, Denmark, and many countries as well. So I got the chance and opportunity. I think, I was lucky to work in different project size, company size. I usually say, like, one of our customer in Denmark, a client or a company which has maybe like 3 or 4 employees. And, I'm working now in a company which has more than 500,000 employees. So it's 500,000 employees. So, having this different culture and size, it just makes you understand that there is always different solution to make everything. There is no one solution. I like German experience. This is why I have YouTube channel, blog post, blog where it has hundreds of videos, and blog which I'm sure you will find many of them, can help you. This is some links of me. Okay, so this is a quick, like intro about me. And I like to share, as a special quote. Usually I start saying, I have many quotes, but this is one of them, is reading 1,000 book about how to drive a car will never make you a driver. Nothing can beat experience. So I remember when I share this quote, some people say, but the books is very important. And again, my quote doesn't say that the book is not important, or I'm not saying that you should not study, or no. But if you look at this analogy, I'm using the driving. If you just think about the metaphor here, or the analogy here, is to emphasize that the reading is not enough to learn or to know how to drive. It's all about the experiment. It's all about the experience. So what I wanted to try here, as long as, or as more as you put, or you run many experiment about what you read, what you study, you start to have realizing, or your realization change about how you read, because when you read something, this makes some realization about this idea. And then you start, running the experiment, then you start understanding different thing about what you read, because when you read it, you understand it in certain way, and when you run the experiment, you start have different realization. And this is exactly what I'm saying: more experiment, more realization about what you read. Okay, so also it is good to, to share with you that I run a community. It's called Cloud DevOps Vision. And Cloud DevOps Vision is an open source initiative that believes in open source education. It aims to help educate people all over the world to learn DevOps and cloud. And this community is empowered by Microsoft Regional Director and MVP program members. And in this community, we have live session, we mentoring people to improve their career path, how, for example, become an MVP, or how to develop their career path, either inside their company or inside, how to join other company, how to join big companies. I received this as many times. We also working on open source projects and have studying groups. We also recommend jobs and referrer, how to, it's not just, for example, is mentoring people, but also to help people getting the job. And this community is leading by 3 MVPs and one of Microsoft regional director, which he is Ahmad Baha, is an associate professor in AI and computer science university, different and several universities. And this community has more than 900 people from more than 40 countries. We try to have a collaboration about learning and so on. Okay, so I have a DevOps plan, about when people ask me, I receive many questions. People ask me, I want to become a DevOps engineer, what I need to do. And again, part of my videos, I have more than 300 videos, as I explained to you. So I have a plan about, the starting point for the DevOps. And this plan including around 12 videos and 3 books. So I'm not going to talk deeply about the books and the videos, but this is just in my channel. You will find this video, which the 12 videos I recommend to watch. And again, all of them is for free. And the 3 books is not for me, but this is one of, or this is 3 books that I recommended to read. Once you started that as a beginning, then you start realizing many things. Okay, what I'm going to present, again, there is more than 300 videos, and I'm not going to So let me start by the DevOps. I think I will not say one of the misleading, but there is, there is some, how to say that, wrong perception about how people look at the DevOps, even the market, and So let me introduce what is the DevOps is. I think again, to talking about the DevOps, you need to look at the complete end life cycle. DevOps is not the CI and CD. DevOps is more than just some automation or or pipelines, CI/CD pipelines or that. DevOps is covering the end-to-end life cycle. This is why it's very important to understand the complete life cycle, even if you are just working part of that, but you need to understand the big picture. Because working as a DevOps for me is not just working to automate the CI/CD, but it's just orchestrating the end-to-end life cycle. So, we know that, for example, when we're talking about the life cycle, we have the planning phase. This is where the requirement management, tracking the project. We have the code part when we're developing the application, writing the unit test, talking about branch and merge strategy, building the application, the CI, the code quality of your application, and when we're talking about package, test, release application, configuration, and monitor. With each stage or with each area, because it's not stage anymore, but with each area, there is many activities, practices, and we need to understand all of that as an end-to-end. So, and also it is very important to understand what is the lead time and frequency of deployment. And the best option to understand that is to talk about, what is the lead time. So if we're talking, for example, about Kanban board, when we have our requirement, let's say, for example, I have 2 requirements in my backlog. And this requirement, we will start, developing this requirement. So it is in the analysis phase or in the analysis stage or, in the analysis area where, we're writing the requirements, the acceptance criteria, all of that, practices. And then we start moving to building or developing this requirement, and then moving to testing this requirement. And then once we complete, we deploy this requirement. And another requirement, we're doing the same. And behind the scene, there is many activities like build automation, configuration management, package management, monitor the application, release pipe, configuration behind that, this item moving from one column to another, And the main idea here is that we need to understand the most important part of moving this item is the time between adding the requirement to the backlog and the time between deploying the requirement in production. And it is not only deploying, but I will say deploying and the requirement is available for the user or for the end user. So this time, what we call the lead time. And this lead time can be, again, could be hours, could be weeks, could be days. It's based on, your process, your DevOps adoption hills and, strengths and all of that. And the time to deploy in production, this is the frequency of the deployment in production, which is, again, one of the most important measure for the DevOps hills. So again, let's try to understand the difference between Scrum and Kanban. Because again, when I'm talking now, for example, it's just moving one requirement. But again, it is based on the process. So for example, when we look at the Scrum, and Kanban, what is the difference between, what is the main difference? There is, of course, many different, and I'm not going to talk about them. But the main difference is how the Scrum and Kanban, are different from the delivery part. So for example, if we look at Scrum, when we have some requirements in the backlog, and we complete this requirement, you are not allowed to deploy item to the production. You need to wait to complete the sprint backlog. This is why we deploy the sprint backlog into production. But when we look at the Kanban, it's completely different. Kanban, it doesn't have a sprint backlog. It doesn't have a sprint scope for what you are going to deploy to production or what you are going to deliver. This is why when we're talking about Kanban, it's all about, you're working in this requirement. Once you complete, you just deploy it to production. You have another requirement. Once you complete, you just deploy that to production. Another one, you just deploy that to production, and so on. So as you can see, the main difference between the Kanban and Scrum is the main change, or the change in the lead time. Because in the Scrum, it's all about the sprint backlog, but in Kanban, it's just requirement per requirement. This is why the lead time here is completely different. So again, what I'm talking about is all understanding the DevOps as an end-to-end. This is your key to, to build your career in the DevOps. So what practice implement, define where you are. Again, many companies, many people, many teams, they believe they are DevOps, but they are not. So based on the activities that you implement, it defines if you are, really implementing DevOps or not. So for example, if you doing agile development, this is when you have a plan, code, build. So for example, you have an agile development, you have Kanban or Scrum or code and build. But if you have not a test automation and this part of the system integration test and all of this automation, then you are not, this is just the agile development. If you're making automation test and package management, this is what we call continuous integration. If you have, a pipeline for CI and CD, including the package, this is continuous delivery. If you monitor your application, you get the feedback and the usage, you have an EMP testing in production, all these activities, then this is you implementing the DevOps. So it is based on the activities and the practices you implement, then this, reflecting if you are, adopting DevOps or not. So again, DevOps is all about the end-to-end process. It's including plan, dev, test, release, monitor, and learn, And so with a plan, we're talking about all the planning, activities. When we're talking about development test, we're talking about write code, unit test, version control, build verification test. When we're talking about release, we're including automate the functional testing, integration testing, load testing, staging environment, and then monitor the application, feedback, and so on. So DevOps cover the end-to-end pipeline, and I see it is the same as a pipeline. So if you have block in one area, it will block the complete pipeline. And this is why when people just look at the DevOps job as a just build engineer or CI/CD, or maybe a site reliability engineer, or working on on the site maintenance or operation, it is not. It is just an end-to-end for me that have one area plugged will plug the complete flow of the value to the end user. Okay, so yes, this is the main idea. This is why when you want to build your career around the DevOps, it's all about implementing the T-shape, which means that you need to understand the end-to-end life cycle, but you go deeply and vertical about the core of the DevOps. For example, if you are a DevOps engineer, yes, you may focus on the CI and CD build pipeline, maybe some monitoring configuration, infrastructure as code, and all of that. But again, you need to cover the end-to-end. So if you want to get promoted, like for example, from a DevOps engineer to a senior DevOps engineer, or maybe an architect, DevOps architect, or principal DevOps, then you need to cover more area. So it's all about, again, having the ability to work outside of this area. I mean, with with horizontal, with moving this area, and as you go promoting in your position in the DevOps role, it means that you get more deeper in the plan and code, and if you understand what I mean. Do you have any question, Matthias?
Okay, so when we are starting, like as a DevOps engineer, for example, we would focus more from the build until the monitoring, basically. And then as we grow as a senior DevOps, we should focus more. We bring all the stuff, but also studying more about the code, about the plan, and to have knowledge of the whole stuff, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. For example, in many cases, I saw maybe, for example, in many DevOps engineers, they don't do infrastructure as code. So the part of the configuration, they don't have it. So like configuration environment and infrastructure as code. Maybe many also of the DevOps, like implementation, they don't have monitor. So they maybe focus on the build and the release pipeline. But again, yes, you're right, focusing on that. But even the test, by the way, for example, you need to have from my perspective, you need to have the experience, as we it's like cross-functional, skills about, again, you are not a tester, but you need to understand how the testing, is practices, how, because again, you are the one that will connect all of that together, and you need to have this vision,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
Okay.
definitely it's important.
Okay, just one more question.
Yeah.
The most part of the guys who are here, they are more like system administrators. So it's pretty like operating system, Linux servers and stuff. So we are more familiar with like infrastructure as code. But
Yeah.
how we can start learning about testing and like building applications if we are more of the system administrator area? Like what would you recommend?
Yes, this is why in my community I build a very small application called the Easy App. I will show you that. Let me show you that. So because it's at the end is
Okay.
um, so for example, if you go for DevOps Vision or Cloud DevOps Vision, both of them. So for example, I have Easy App. So Easy App, for example, as you can see, it's a very small application. It's developed in JavaScript and HTML. So for example, if you look at that, it just, like a calculator, it just take two numbers, sum them, and gives you the result. It changes some of the background of, of this color from blue to red, so it's very small functionality developed in JavaScript. My idea here that, this is why I built this application and this project on GitHub, that you should take something like that. Again, you can join this project, try to do that. And what you need to do is, again, just think about that. You will learn everything. So the code, the build, the test, the package, everything. So for example, you need to learn the code for that part, how to write the JavaScript. But maybe here you will say, like, I'm a sysadmin and I'm not interested to write code. And again, for me, I think you need to understand how to write code. You need to understand what is the unit testing. You need to understand what we need to change. For example, building this application, again, it's very simple because it's JavaScript, and it's, if you look at the code, it is not like, for example, if you didn't develop before, yes, you may take, but it's, at the end, it's just a lower level example. So for example, if you look at the code here, no, this is not, let me show you here. This is the source of the code. Yeah, so as you can see, it's just a very small application and have some JavaScript. It also includes some unit testing in Jasmine, which is a unit testing framework for JavaScript. It also including some UI automation that run a UI that verify that the functionality and the usability of the application. So if I get back to the question, what I recommend in general, that you need to have a small application that you can use from the beginning to the end, where you can plan. So you can have the board, you have the requirement, you understand what is the requirement, what does it mean, the acceptance criteria, what is the process of managing the requirement engineering, and the backlog, the board, all of this activity. And then you go for the code, how to write the code, the unit testing, the code quality scanning tools. For example, we have some practices to scan the code to find, like, for example, in this application, where it is here. In this application, for example, I using a tool called, let me remember. Yes, ESLint. For example, ESLint, this is a static analysis tool. Like, for example, this tool will scan the code to make sure that you don't have, for example, it is not error, but it makes sure that you write a clean code, for example. So what I suggest again is all about, you need to implement these practices in very small application from the beginning to the end. So if you remember my quote about reading 1,000 book about driving a car will never make you a driver. So you need to, to start driving. So taking one small example from the beginning to the end, I think this will be the way from my point of view. And when people are teaching people DevOps or mentoring them, this is what I usually, ask them to do. If they say, no, I'm not a developer, you need to learn development just to develop this application. And when they write unit test or testing, I'm not a tester. You need to learn how to write unit test. You need to learn how to write UI test. Again, you are not going to be a UI tester. You are not going to be a complete developer, but you need to understand how things really work from inside, not from outside only.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you.
No problem. So yes, that's it. Here also I'm saying that again, we can't improve what we don't measure. So to get improved, we have to monitor and measure over time. This is why we have what we call, the status report and the trend report. So the status report just to show us what is the current numbers now, but the trend report showing us the change over time. So when we're talking about DevOps, it's all about the change over time. I explain the frequency of deployment. Like, for example, some companies deploy in production every 3 months or every 6 months. Some other companies, they deploy multiple times a day, So it's all about measuring that over time to understand the change over time. Because, for example, if you are in a company, again, and this is usually, let me ask you a question, Matthias. If you have a CI/CD, okay, and a perfect CI/CD, but again, let me tell you here, if we get back to, this is usually I say, like, we explain here that the requirement moving from the beginning to the end, right? So if you have a very, very powerful or very strong pipeline, CI/CD pipeline, but this requirement to complete developing of this requirement, it just took like 2 or 3 months. So what is the value of your CI/CD?
Yeah, there's no value.
Yeah. So, and this is exactly what I'm trying to say, you build something really great, but again, because if you just focus on the building the CI/CD, building the automation, but you have a problem in the requirement sizing because you didn't manage how to have a right size for the requirement, So again, your problem is not the CI/CD. There is another issue in the process which is blocking you from moving the value in the production. Because again, the DevOps is all about moving the requirement, which is the value for the end user, from the beginning to production, because this is the requirement for the customer, for the end user. We want to give that to the end user as much as possible. You got my point? So it is not the CI/CD, it is not just the automation, it's all about what is blocking you from moving fast without compromising the security, without compromising the quality, So you have to keep all, the picture. Yes, I think, again, what I'm trying to say here, there is some measurement for the DevOps, either the frequency of the deployment, speed of the deployment, because yes, you have more frequency, but how long it takes to deploy in production, like, for example, because sometimes you may need to increase, or improve the speed of your deployment, maybe the infrastructure of your deployment, the release or the deployment pipeline and so on. The change in the lead time. The lead time, is we talking about the lead time. So for example, if your lead time is starting a project with the lead time, which say, let's say, for example, 2 months, then we, by monitoring or by measuring the change in the lead time over, over time. Let me give you an example. If you start a project and you try to improve the DevOps, and again, you build a great CI/CD pipeline, but the lead time you start the project, it was 3 months. When you add a requirement to the backlog, it took 3 months to be deployed in production. Now, after 1 month, we measure the lead time, it's still 3 months. After 3 months, or after 6 months, it's still 3 months. After 1 year. So what I'm trying to say here, if the lead time is still the same, it means that, again, you are not improving. So changing the lead time, it reflects, the improvement of your DevOps. And again, CI/CD. There is also many verification, like speed of the build verification, how long it takes to verify that this build is, has a good quality to be deployed in production. There is also change in the fail rate. There is incident defect volumes, time to detect and time to resolve problems. So, and this is the agility performance indicator, and this is the reliability indicators. Again, there is numbers talking some studies about numbers, and this is the 2 companies. This is a white paper by Puppet and another paper by DORA, or DevOps Research and Assessment, which has an academic research that shares some, insight from around 30,000 companies about their adoption. And again, they found that, the more frequently companies deploy the more that the practices they implement and providing more values, and more companies providing that, so the number is always increased. So, and this is a real example. For example, Amazon deploying production every 11.6 seconds. Maximum deployment in a single hour, around 10,000 deployment. And again, there is many stories. It's not only Amazon. There is Netflix, HubSpot, ST, IMVU, Microsoft also, and Mozilla. There is many products about that. So it's all about, having not disconnected. When we have blocking this area, we need to remove the blocker. And no matter what is the tool you implement, it's all about, connecting that. This is why the cloud, one of the things that, especially cloud natives, that give us the ability to, to remove this blocker and being more agile and, responsive. So yes, it's all about removing the blocks. Again, I bring many, many of the slides, but again, I think it's better also to take some question or have discussion before moving. I don't want to, spending more time on the slides.
Yeah, no problem. Just a quick question. Can we get this PPT, this PowerPoint somewhere?
You can, part of the PPT, because it's, it's a community work, and so you can, okay. I can have a PDF for you. So yes, I can share that as a PDF.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah,
thank you.
No problem. Okay, so let me get back to. Yeah, so what do you think? Should we continue the presentation? Again, for me, I like more interactivity where I can, because I think, when there is more question, you can extract more information from me. Okay. Or do you prefer to I continue some of the slides talking about CI and CD?
Okay, I think we can make some 5 minutes to wait for our colleagues here to send some questions on the comments. I will make you some questions, which I was taking some notes here. But let's see if someone can comment here something.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, so let me, until we're waiting. So what I wanted also to emphasize about, you have to build your knowledge about what is the difference between CI and CD, because I have seen, many confusion about, them. For example, some people running automation UI testing or integration testing as a part of the CI, which is something, which is something I will not say wrong. I don't say wrong or right, but I will say something I don't prefer to do. It is, at the end, CI should be running very fast. It should be running in seconds or minutes. I remember Microsoft Azure DevOps, they run around 60,000 tests in around 20 minutes. I should bring this slide, by the way, and maybe I added for another, but at the end so for example, CI is compiling the application, is building and minification, transforming your application from one form to another. Like, for example, when you're developing the application, you may have your code in a one form, but when you're deploying this application to the destination, you may have another format. One of the example is the CSS or the HTML or JavaScript. For example, the JavaScript, you need line by line because you need to write the code. But when you deploy that on the server, it can be minified, which one server will not develop that. And this is exactly what I'm saying. You need to learn the development, because once you understand the development and why you need to why you need to do that here in this case, then you get again realization of the practices, not just by reading that. It is the same as again reading the book about the car, driving the car, and driving the car. So yes, this is the build. You version the application, run the unit test, calculate the code coverage of the unit test, run the code analysis. You also run the UI tests, the unit test for UI, which testing only the usability, not testing the application functionality, because there is a huge difference. Calculate the code coverage, run code analysis, like the quality of the code. For example, measure the technical debt code smells, like using Sonar Cloud, maybe Index, any quality tools. You can also calculate and run the code metrics, like, for example, the depths of inheritance for your code, stick metrics, and the complexity of your code, all of that. Create code documentation and package artifacts, store the package in the repository. When you're talking about the release pipeline, this is start with spinning or provision the environment, configure the environment, deploy application to the environment, install the package on the environment, configure the package on the environment, create testing data, run integration, acceptance test, rollback, promote deployment to next environment, and so on. So to just give you the process, we know that, for example, code, and then you build the application, run the unit test, and then package the application, which is boxing all your application in a box. The main idea, you packaging your application, it will be easy to deploy. And once you package the application, you store the application. Sorry, you provision here. This is the old way. You provision, you deploy. But the best practices now is to store the application before you provision your environment and deploy. So we can, instead of building the application again, we just get the package from the storage and start provision the environment and deploy the environment. Yes, so I think that's enough from the slide. It just again, is try to open the, some of the idea about how I look at the DevOps as as an end-to-end, as a principal consultant, and how you can develop your career around that.
Great. Leandro says the presentations already answered a lot of questions. Well done. But he asked about the small application that you were saying.
Yeah.
So I think it's on the Cloud DevOps Visions website, right?
Yes, it's a Cloud DevOps. It's called the Easy App. And again, you can just download the application. It's very small calculator. It has unit testing with Jasmine. It has also a UI testing with Selenium, which testing like 2 or 3 functions. So, and again, what I would like is that people join to build that, because again, I'm looking that people join to drive the car, If you want, then I can guide you how to drive the car, but I can't drive for you, if you understand what I mean. It's just I need you to sit on the chair of the car and and I can guide you. Yes, but what I'm talking about, you need to make an end-to-end plan, dev, code, test, configure, package, all of the end-to-end. If you do it on a very small application, then you can, you can do with that, understand that.
Great. So you can get, Leandro, you can get the repository. It's on the description, the website Cloud DevOps Vision, and there you can download the application. Everything on the description.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Exactly.
Let me see here. Leo sent a question in Portuguese. Let me translate. So he's like in transition from sysadmin role, system administrator, and he's like starting his career with DevOps. So his biggest challenge is he doesn't have a background with programming, with coding. So he's trying to learn and understand more about this code stuff, and saying that it's a big challenge.
Yes, but at the end, this is exactly what I'm saying. If you learn something very small, but focus on the practice, like for example, you write code, and then once you understand, how to structure the code. Again, this is when people ask me what language we should learn anything, pick any language. It is not important what is the language, because at the end, once you understand one language, you can learn any other language. But again, because what is really missing is not just the writing the code, it's the of writing the code. Because I saw many of the the people, for example, that's coming from the sysadmin when they write infrastructure as a code. And again, the people, they don't have the culture. So for example, they don't structure the code in the right way. They don't package the code. They don't think how to transform this code to be, in order to versioning. Or so again, if you have the culture, then so yes, I completely understand that you don't have the dev, but learning something like very small, like the JavaScript, you just, if you look at the Easy App, for example, it just like, yes, very, very small application. You just click on the button. But again, this is why it's very small application, but you need to learn everything about it.
Cool. Let me just translate this to Portuguese.
Yeah.
Léo, o Mohamed ele recomendou o seguinte, para quem não tem conhecimento de código, basicamente tu vai baixar uma aplicação, usar uma aplicação demo, tipo um JavaScript. Ele colocou, tem um repositório dele aqui na descrição, Cloud DevOps Vision, e tu consegue pegar o código que ele escreveu ali em JavaScript, e a partir daquilo ali tu consegue estudar todas as outras coisas, que é na parte do código, fazer teste de unit, teste de integration. Então tu pega uma aplicação demo e tu começa a estudar mais sobre isso. Então, justamente para ter esse conhecimento end-to-end, tu começa a estudar a parte do código e vai passando sobre todas aquelas partes lá. O Mohamed, ele vai me enviar depois, ele falou um PDF com algumas coisas dessa apresentação, que algumas coisas são internas lá e tal, mas ele vai me enviar e aí vocês podem ler todos os passos. É interessante para mim isso aí também, porque eu sei só da parte da infra, né? Também estou começando a estudar sobre isso. Mas da hora. Espero que tenha entendido aí. Qualquer coisa, comenta de novo. Ok, cool. Leandro said, after understanding the concept of DevOps, can you suggest a set of tools where you can create your first CI/CD setup, and which technology is a good start point to it?
I'm working with Azure DevOps, Azure Pipelines. Also, I really like, yes, while I'm Microsoft MVP, but I really like open source, and I found Jenkins is a great tool as well. And this is what I emphasize all the people. Again, don't think the tool is, yes, the tool of course is, I will say it's important, but again, the practices is more important than the tool. And once you understand the practices, you will just, you can pick whatever the tool and learn that. So I will say again, start with any tool. So for example, if you have the decision, then it's better to start with the open source. I will say.
Mm-hmm. Cool, great. Guys, do you have any other questions? Please comment here. Se vocês têm alguma pergunta, comentem aqui. Se for em português, eu traduzo para o inglês. Okay, cool. Let me ask you something.
Sure.
While they're trying to look for something else. In the beginning of the presentation, you said something about the MVP from the Microsoft. And I was thinking if there is any chance that we, as like more from the open source side, can we enter on this Microsoft world from the open source? Can we is there a way to be a Microsoft MVP from the open source side?
Yeah, sure. At the end, yes, the MVP program, you can if you are an open source, but at the end is the MVP program is that you share your knowledge around the Microsoft products. So for example, you can pick off one of the Microsoft products that is really open source or something, and then you share your knowledge. Again, it is not, it's, I mean, it's all about the MVP is a word and like a thank you, a word for people that sharing their knowledge for, helping Microsoft customers with solving, like technical issues or cutting edge technologies or, so yes, if you're coming from open source, but you can contribute and help some other, a Microsoft ecosystem to implement some practices, and because for example, you're coming from open source, but you don't work with Azure, for example, cloud. Who doesn't, like multi-cloud is a target. For example, we have seen many customers working with Azure, AWS, and GCP or Google Cloud Provider. So it is not like, so yes, definitely you can.
Cool. I was starting to study more about the Windows subsystem for Linux, WSL. So I feel like perhaps starting to produce some content about this would be cool.
Yes, valuable content, like just helping people to adapt or solving problems for people. Yes, this is what they look for, the MVP.
Great, great. So I would ask, I was taking some notes on the start of the presentation, like, would you recommend like focusing more on one tech or be more generic? But I think you have responded this, like we need to understand the whole thing, right?
Yes, whole thing as a practice. Mm-hmm. And for the stack, I will say yes, it's I mean, for the technology, it's different. For the practices, it is the same, no matter what is the stack. Okay. But when we're talking about the technology, which is stack, for me, I believe it's being responsive. Like, again, I'm working here in the UK, where I join different project. I work in a consultancy company where, where I go for project A or project B, and each project has a different tools and platform. So I need to be more flexible about the stack, Of course, my core stack is around Microsoft, but again, I'm very open for all platform and tools. But in some cases, maybe this could be a little bit for example, when people are starting their career, maybe, like jumping from one stack to another, maybe it's not, because now I have been 17 years in the industry. So maybe, yes, I can do that. But for other, so yes, it's difficult, because it's based on the situation. But at the end, what I'm saying is, I really believe that being responsive and don't stack to tools or platform or no, this is better than, no, there is nothing better, So just try to be try to again implement what is available, try to be adaptive and responsive, and being dynamic. That's it.
Great, perfect. One last question from my side. Can you share a little bit about how was your experience from changing from one country to another? Because we as Brazilians, we have this, we are born with this feeling like we want to get the hell out of here and work in Europe or something. So can you try to share something about this?
Yes, I think we are in the same in Egypt. Many people in Egypt, I'm Egyptian. So, and we, yes, we would like to travel maybe Europe or US or, so again, for me is even this is the community. Before I travel, for example, I was working in Egypt till 2012. Of course, I traveled before 2012. I traveled to Saudi Arabia, Kuwait. It was all in the Middle East. But because my work in the community, then I become very popular for many companies, many people. Then I started getting, getting many job opportunities. So my first job would come to, I got an offer from Sweden company. Then I traveled to Sweden, then going to Denmark. Then another company called me from Denmark, from the UK. And I got, like job offers, Switzerland, France, many, because again, part of the MVP, part of the contribution. And this is why, again, when people ask me, the community is win to win for everything, win to win because you learn, win to win because, you help people. you get feedback about what you're doing, so you can improve. For example, I remember my first framework I developed. It was in 2010, and I was developing my framework in some. So I got a feedback from a German, an engineer in Germany, where he told me, why you did that, you should do that, you should do that. And I never think about that. So yes, the community is all about that. So I will again encourage people to do more about building your brand, try to contribute. You will, you will get all the and then you can start your journey.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And do you have any tip for like LinkedIn, or what should we focus like for this kind of transition?
I will say, it's a long-term strategy. So you will not build that in like a couple of months, or, I remember, for example, I took like 2 or 3 years, very hard work to, to start but after 2 or 3 years of the hard work, I remember when I put the link on my blog, I found that Microsoft in US, they have broadcasting talking about talking about my work, sharing with that. For example, there is many. I remember I still even have that on my YouTube, because it's something really nice that people talking about my work. So yes, it's not a very quick response, and this is why it's a long term. So my tips again, you need to build the long term, and again, don't try to just build that to get the job, or if you build that to share your knowledge. Again, try to get the feedback, try to build the network, because the network also is very important, and then this will come by time. So yes, LinkedIn is very important, of course. Build a very, don't just share anything on LinkedIn. I'm very sensitive for what I'm sharing on LinkedIn. For example, I usually share like 1 or 2 posts, like one per week or maybe one every 2 weeks, because again, I don't want, like, it's not a Facebook, or it's not. So, and again, people's time is really precious, especially in Europe, as I told you. So people not expecting to read anything, like, for example, if I'm not sharing very valuable information, I will not do that. So yes, you need to build your brand. I think building the brand is very important, and this is why you will build how the people look at you. So, and this will takes time. So yes, you just have this is long strategy. And if you look at my blog, for example, I started 2010. It has more than 400. I didn't build that in one, in 1 month, or it took years, So yes, it just take. But once you take the first step, on the, then you start investing. You will gain some of that, and once you gain, you start to invest more in that, and then you will start growing.
Great. Yeah, I feel the same, because I have started my blog in 2017, and I wrote more than 200 posts. So yeah, it's a long-term job. I have some years ahead, but yeah, it's been great until right now. But everything that you like, something that I believe is that everything that you send to the world will send back to you, right?
Yes, exactly.
So that's
yes,
cool.
this is why don't do it because you want to get a job, or you're going. Again, I'm doing that to have fun, to share, and it will give you the value at the end.
Great. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. So if you don't have any further question, or at least you're shy to ask, you can like drop a message to me. I can send to Mohammed, or you can add him perhaps on LinkedIn, or ask something, or ask for help.
Sure.
I believe you can join the community, the Cloud DevOps Visions. Start. I would like to start a challenge. Like we should clone the repository from the application, the Easy app, and try to build something.
I would be really happy that, for example, people like say, for example, but again, for me, this is why when people ask me private question in LinkedIn, or I don't answer private question, because it's not I mean, for example, I say I don't prefer to answer private questions, but I mean, for me, I would like to help people. Like, for example, if they couldn't build the application, if they couldn't clone the application, then I will just remove the blocker so they can move forward. And once they will understand that. So yes, I'm happy to help everyone, Great.
Yeah, cool. I think that's a part of how the community works, right?
Yes, exactly.
There are some guys that, can you build this for me? Like, of course not. You do it and tell me where you're stuck, and I'm gonna
exactly.
help.
This is why I usually say, like, if you don't put the effort to do it first, don't expect me to do that for you.
Yeah.
And again, I'm trying to just removing the blocker, not just And another point also, I got many questions for people getting certificate. Like, they have maybe 5 certificates and they ask me, what is the next? Come on, stop taking certificates. Just starting a job. Yes, we can't get a job. Okay, then start doing in the community, building an open source. Forget about my easy app. Bring your friends, your colleagues, and build something on the GitHub. Try to do the practices from the beginning to the end, and that's it. So don't wait for the opportunity. Build the opportunity. So this is a very important part.
Perfect. I agree. Okay, guys. Let me just switch for a bit to Portuguese. Pessoal, então, se vocês não têm mais perguntas, ou se vocês tiverem alguma pergunta depois, ou quiser perguntar agora, podem perguntar no privado, tá? O Mohamed, ele não responde no privado, obviamente, e tá totalmente certo. Mas aí vocês podem postar, ou só enviar, dúvidas onde vocês estão trancados. Vamos tentar montar esse projeto. Eu acho que vai ser bem bacana para aprender do começo ao fim. Beleza? Eu vou tentar até fazer algum vídeo sobre isso, alguma coisa assim. Então eu vou só voltar para o inglês para agradecer o Mohamed e a gente já finaliza, beleza? Obrigado por todo mundo aí que participou. Okay, Mohamed, I would like to thank you for taking time to share knowledge. It was great.
Thank you for the invite. Thank you.
Yeah, it was great. Great presentation. It helped a lot to learn and understand where I should focus right now. What are my next steps? Like, I was really focused on the infrastructure, right? But I need to understand the whole picture. So it was really important for me because I'm going to focus on this right now.
Yes, and again, you need to move vertical, but don't forget the horizontal as well. So this is why I'm saying, don't put all your time vertical. I would say put part of your time in the horizontal part. That's it.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Thank you very much. If you want to say something.
No, that's it. I think, again, I will say, for me, I would like to say, for example, I was not graduated first from a computer science, by the way. I was graduated from a faculty of commerce. I am a self-learner where I started, of course, I took after that a computer science degree and master and all of that. But what I'm saying that the world is open for you. You can learn whatever you need. You just, again, put the effort and try again. Don't think very short term. Just think of long term and build your brand, and you will get it. Build your opportunity. I will say that.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, guys. Bye, Mohamed. Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.